to the American Football Institute Sports Channel with former National Football League defensive tackle and now an NFL consultant, Chris Mamalanga.
Welcome to the American Football Institute. My name is Chris Mamalanga. I'm your host this evening and also the founder of the American Football Institute. Super excited tonight. The whole purpose of our institute is to share real stories, real information, so that we can change lives through this wonderful game of American football that I fell in love with as a young adolescent. And our attempt is to, connect with people in our networks. We're able to share and also help people to understand all the benefits in this sport. And what I do, I'd like to introduce our guest evening all the way from Auckland, New Zealand, a gentleman who's actually looking for the same time I did. I was at the University of Kansas. We actually competed each other. He was back in the early 90s, 1992 to be exact. And super chance to speak to you from Auckland, New Zealand. How you doing?
I'm doing, Chris, doing awesome. Unfortunately, I'm just getting a bit of feedback. A bit of, I don't know if it's my end. I can see you now.
I think we're clear now. Can you hear me?
Okay, yeah. I'm doing great. Awesome. Anything about football, man, I'm always excited, especially when it comes to talking of you.
Yeah, thank you, Coach. I know you're busy over there in New Zealand, and I know we crossed paths back in the early 90s, but most recently, was it 2019?
Yes.
Was it 2018? When was the 40th anniversary for the Metro Lions American Football Club?
You know what? I think maybe 2019. I don't know, hazard a guess. I think 2019. But it's a great occasion.
Yeah. I believe it was 2019. I actually was introduced to the Metro Lions Football Club through a friend of mine here in Los Angeles, California, by the name of George Malaulu. George runs a group called the Ainga Foundation here out of Carson, California, and Long Beach, California. And we actually ran into each other at the Polynesian Football Hall of Fame game. And he was actually invited to come to the 40th year anniversary. So I'm glad that I was the plan B and I got a chance to spend time with you and and Mark Nua, and such a wonderful celebration with yourself and all the folks involved, Sam Pelisi and Martin Stowers and all the Metro Lions family. And before we get started, Sammy, can you please kind of share us with our audience a little bit about who you are and kind of how you came to play American football?
Sure, man. Back in high school, my cousin, Big David, he used to bring this back in the late 70s, early 80s. He used to bring these videos from Pan Am when Pan Am used to fly to New Zealand. And Pan Am, we used to watch these highlights every lunchtime, every Friday. It's just fascinating because we're watching these NFL athletes, and then we started seeing Polynesian players. We saw, I remember the names, Mose Tupu, Wilson Famina. Sadly, they both passed away. And there weren't many Polynesians, but man, there was just enough there. And then we'd play some disorganized football at the schools, but then we ended up playing at our community parks, local games, organized games. And then, thanks to the Mormon missionaries back in the early 80s, they started running coaching clinics. And it was exciting, man. We were so, pumped up, go to the clinics, and they were, thing about the Americans, they were so inspiring, the way they talked, the way they made you feel good. They couldn't believe the amount of athleticism we had. The only problem was the clinics. A lot of my friends went, and they were awesome athletes, far better than me. There was no drinking. They all thought they go along and they get all these free, free alcohol. But being the Mormon church, they didn't encourage it. So a man named George O'Scallon started the league there in the early '80s. Remember those old 1940s pictures with the leather helmets, gridiron,
Yeah.
American football? Well, we had those type of caps. How we started. It's really primitive. This is back in the early '80s. Very primitive league. So it was full full contact in a way, but a lot of us are rugby and rugby league backgrounds, so it was not really that much different for us other than the collision contact that football has. So George O'Scanlan started the league. I started playing, and then a few guys started getting noticed. Really superb. I was in my mid-20s when I finally made the transition. I just fell in love with the game and just got a chance to come over here. My I went with Dave Dixon to the States. Dave Dixon, he is 6'7". He's the perfect, 6'7". He was 17. I was in my early 20s when we both went over. So my struggle was I'm only 5'10". Chris, you're about 6'3", 6'2".
Yeah.
So I'm only 5'10". So I used to hear a lot about it that you can't play, really hard to play college football your height. So I said, okay, I'm going to be the biggest, strongest player that I can be. So I got one of those biggest, strongest Joe Wider building book, bodybuilding books. I lifted. I
Right.
remember Tom Platts. I lifted. I used to do 10 reps of 500 pounds. I really got into weightlifting because I figured, well,
Wow.
if I'm not strong enough, tall enough, I'll be strong enough. There was a guy called Terry Long. He was only 5'10". He played in the Steelers. Unfortunately, he passed away. But I used to always look out for linemen that were short. Plus, I had some really good coaches at junior college Mount Sac. They used to always tell me, "You can do it. You've got the girth. You've got the girth. Being the width and the aggression." So those are my challenges. But that's how I got into it. Just fell in love with the game, and I've been in love with the game way, um, more than rugby, more than league. Probably the same as football. You can't get. This is a game where once someone understands football, they're hooked because it's chess. You know. Yeah, that's my journey.
Right.
Yeah,
Now, were you born and raised in New Zealand?
yeah. I was, we spent a lot of time in New Zealand and Samoa, so a lot of our background was rugby and rugby league. Um, so I
Right.
grew up here. Yep, went to a pretty prestigious school, Man Abbott Boys Grammar, and it was all boys school. So yeah, but we loved American sports. Couldn't get enough. You know.
Right. I just think it's amazing to be raised and with a background from a small island in Samoa, and then being in New
Yeah.
Zealand and not having the game there. They don't play American football
Uh,
um, on the little leagues or high school in New Zealand. Still today, right? They don't play American football.
yeah. Yeah. It's very. It's There's only about six clubs, and about probably four consistently senior teams. So, like what you're doing, the main, you're identifying the talent early because unlike basketball or soccer here, soccer football, they have good competition, so they can go overseas. Whereas here we have
Yeah,
to pick the talent, bring them over because then you can't gauge the competition. Yeah, and coming from Samoa, parents, a lot of our generation came here. A lot of our parents came to New Zealand. A lot of our uncles and aunties went to the States. So there's all that migration. Yeah, yeah.
that's great, man. I mean, you came here. You were only in your 20s. I think it's amazing that you came. Really, it's kind of older to be able to learn a
Yeah.
new code, a new game, and come here through the junior college route, um, and then to make it to the Pac-10. At the time.
Yes. Yeah.
The Pac-10 was actually one of the dominant conferences back then.
Exactly.
You
Yeah.
know, with UCLA and UCLA, USC, Washington, they were
Yeah.
all,
Oh.
you know,
Um.
uh,
Yeah.
doing really
So
well.
yeah, playing. I was lucky. I played at Mount San Antonio Junior College, Mount Sac. I had a great coach. Great coaches, man. They were really inspiring men. Good teachers. Um.
Hmm.
And but I was lucky. I had a running back who was 6'2", 240, and his name was Leonard Russell, and he used to run through the whole conference. But he always he always added my name into the coaches. He always mentioned me. So I was really lucky that he would always say, "Nah." So Leonard Russell, he became a first-round draft pick NFL out of Long Beach Poly. You know, back in Long Beach Poly, had the great players in the '80s, and so I was lucky then. And then you're right, um, Pac-10, powerful conference. In my year last year, well, Washington won the national title with Miami, and we took 7. So it was a blessing. It's just right timing, right players, and being noticed.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And you had some pretty good talent around you. I mean, a lot of NFL talent. I remember, you know, you guys had Todd Stussy, you had Russell
Yeah,
White, you had, and your coach ended up being an NFL coach,
yeah.
Steve
Steve
Mariucci.
Mariucci,
You know,
his 49ers, but when he left Cal, he went to Coach Brett Favre at Green Bay. He became his quarterbacks coach, and but I always remember one thing he said, because I think you asked a question, what's some of the things, and he always talked about stamina, because if you can't run, you can't play. I always remember that. You can't. People have a misconception about American football that all they see is 5 seconds of playing, but they don't realize that's the most 5 seconds of power and energy you need. It's if you can't run, you can't play. It's a stamina game. Well, it's not stamina, but you need the stamina. To play. Yeah.
yeah, definitely.
So
I mean,
yeah,
there's definitely an anaerobic portion to American football because it's so explosive, and it's kind of
exactly.
one play at a time type of a thing.
Yes. Yeah.
And when you're
Exactly.
coming from rugby is more cardiovascular, it's more
Yeah.
aerobic.
Yeah.
A lot of people can misconstrue that from, oh, American football is easy, but
Yeah.
really it has its own challenges separate from other sports, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
So, Coach Toa, like I said, thank you again for coming on. I have a couple of questions that we're going to
Yeah.
post for our
Sure.
audience to see, and also we'll just follow that. So, we'll start off with our first question, and we'll get started now.
Yeah. Sure.
What made you pursue American football coming from New Zealand? Like, there's
Uh,
always that defining moment where you say, you know what, Dave Dixon's going, I'm going. What was it for you that made you say, you know what, I'm going to go after this thing with American football?
I had this desire. I had to, because you know I wasn't really tracking for the All Blacks, and I wasn't
Right,
really. I was at a sort of crossroads in my rugby and league career. I really hadn't achieved what I wanted, and man, but I just loved football, and I just, if you got to play American football, you got to get to the States. Hey, that's the mecca, and that's why I wanted to go. I wanted to go see family, but also to play. I don't care what level, just to
right.
play there. So that
Yeah, I
was the
think
first.
some of the challenges for American football that's obvious is that it's primarily played in North America. It's just the
Yeah,
U.S. and Canada,
yeah,
and there's no other countries in the world that play professionally that I'm aware of other than North America. So that can make it pretty challenging because it's not like you guys see it on TV all the time.
exactly. Yeah, you don't realize the level until you get there. You know,
Yeah,
everyone's a good lineman. Everyone's good line. Everyone can do everything. So that's when you need to
right.
realize, man, you know, to focus on yourself.
I I think it's awesome that you came here not with the ideal height, but with the ideal desire.
Yeah,
Where 5'10", obviously you're big and strong and athletic, but you were able to overcome your height and still be able to earn a scholarship to the highest level of the university level, to the Power Five level. I
mm,
think that's a great accomplishment.
yeah. I and
We'll go. Yeah, go ahead.
I owe it to coaches. Coach Rod Marinelli. He loves the Polynesian athlete. Um, Rod
Oh,
Marinelli's. I think
Marinelli was one of your coaches.
he was a scout for LA. He would come down there and he'd say, and I'd be like, wow. But at the same time, Pitt, the University of Pitt were interested. I always remember Tony Dorsett from Pitt. But when the pit coach saw me, he said, "Oh,
Yeah.
he's too short to make it in this league." Marinelli just said to me,
Hmm.
because I was thinking of going to Long Beach State with my friends. Remember George Allen had come to Long Beach State, and then Marinelli said to me, "Hey, you
Yes.
want to play in the
Yes.
Pac-10, or do you want to play in the bad or in the social football?" I was like, "Oh yeah," because I wasn't sure if I could really make it, in the Pac-10
Yeah.
level, because I had that complex about my height.
Yeah.
But good coaches, is making so. I was always reminded, technique. If because I was deficient in height, my technique had to be perfect. You know, and
And
so I
what
had to
position
work on.
did you play, Coach?
I played left guard. Yeah, and part of our line, we had a great line. Like you said, Todd Stussy, Troy Alzine, he was the other tackle, um, and we all looked after each other. I don't mind if I missed a guy because I was too aggressive on the line. If I tried to headbutt him, my center would always pick him up. So that's a really good. He knew how I played, and so he'd always back up to make sure I didn't, as I did my spear. A Polynesian blocking. I used to use my head a lot, dive at the guy. So he'd be
Yeah, I
behind me.
mean,
Yeah.
nowadays with the whole concussion issue, they don't teach that anymore, you
No,
know?
no. Okay. Coach said to me, "What do you learn to block like that?" I'm like, "I don't know. Just had enough sometimes." And
Yeah.
but I had a good line. I had all the line went to the NFL except for me. Well, obviously, Uh,
Yeah, you guys
yeah,
had a pretty good line. Look, we
yeah,
our defensive line at the University of Kansas, I'll never forget that we were just coming into our own, but the Pac-12 was so competitive,
yeah.
and then you
Well,
guys came over on a Thursday night. I'll never
I remember
forget
that.
we had Thursday night game, ESPN, and you guys put it on us, man. I mean, we didn't get blown out, but we certainly did
Yeah.
not win,
Well, all they did
and
all week was hype it. You know how coaches love it. So they hyped. They had all your faces up there. You, Stubblefield, and Gilbert Brown. Hey, was a big Gilbert.
yeah,
And the coaches all week, the coaches are going, how are you going to stop this group? How are you guys going to do it? The game's on your O line, and I think a lot of us had enough, but we still had a, a good team from the year before. But after that loss, I think we a few discipline problems. But that was a good win for us. We got into Kansas, we sneaked out with a good win. Yeah, so I know
yeah.
the
And matter of fact, that loss for KU for Kansas was a turning point for us.
yeah,
Kansas is a basketball school,
yeah, of
so
course,
no one thinks about football when it comes to
yeah, yeah.
Kansas, especially back then. And now we're kind of back in that cycle again at Kansas. But I'll never forget that night. That was very memorable.
So you guys, the change for you guys for the better. For us, it sort of made us a bit too cocky, and then we got our beans from we paid Purdue, and that was it.
Yeah,
When the team's not gelling and there's not enough leaders, yeah. So
yeah,
that
definitely.
was. I think the main. I think it was the receiver. Sean Dawkins was the one that was hard to stop. He went to the NFL. He was our
Yes.
wide receiver, and he was pretty talented kid. You know.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, almost our whole defensive backfield ended up going to the NFL.
Yeah,
We
amazing.
had Kwame Lassiter, rest in peace.
Yeah, yeah,
We
yeah.
also
Oh,
we also had Gerald McBurrows and we had
okay.
some my roommate who became a coach for a lot of years at the time, Clint Bowen,
Yes,
who
yeah.
coached Division One level. So we had a pretty good backfield. His brother Charlie Bowen. We had some guys, but that evening was not
It's
our
one of
was
those
not our
evenings.
night.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
But we'll go on
Um,
to our next question, Coach.
sure.
What are some of the biggest challenges you faced as an American football athlete?
I think.
You kind of
Yeah,
talked about how you got here, but what were some of your challenges, especially in that transition from New Zealand
yeah.
to America, to the
So
U.S.?
yeah. So I think from a New Zealand perspective, I can tell you now, it's the mental part of the game. It's understanding the amount of plays. Because I used to look at these guys, and I thought I was smarter than a lot of my classmates, but they understood the game intrinsically. They knew blocking schemes. They talked another language. And for me, it was just like, oh man. But then, guys would help me understand there's certain rules in O line. Bob, remember Bob, big on big. You're always going to be in the,
Yeah.
you know. So man, and my center would always help me. He'd say, "Hey Samoan, you got him. Hey, Samoan, I got him. You go." Right? So honest, they're still learning. But the biggest challenge is the mental part of it. The second one for me is the pace of training and pace, because I always try and bring it to our practices. When I was coaching director at Metro, I said I was studying the
Hmm.
horn and try and get everyone to rush, because that's the way we practice in the States. Everything's at a
Yeah,
pace. But everyone's so casual. And it's the pace and the mental aspect of the game first.
yeah. I think
Those
a
are
lot of people, a lot of people who watch the game, especially rugby fans, it's a little bit frustrating for them because the stop and go part,
yeah,
where you stop, you call your defense, you call your offense, you make a play, and with rugby, the pace is much different. It's more continuous.
yeah,
You
exactly.
know.
What a one American fan who started watching rugby. It's like one big first down, and it's like one big play, but it just keeps going on. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And what now, what's interesting now, coach, is now the best tacklers use rugby style tackling.
yeah, they're using it back because it was the original game. That was the mother game, remember? And then
Yes.
football came out of it. So history. Actually, I'm a rugby league player. Really, that's the other game. The Australian professional game. That's we all grew up playing. It's very just tackle, run, tackle, run. That's why I think
Yeah.
league in America would go a lot further. Should rugby league.
Yeah. Rugby
Yeah,
league is definitely got the similar explosiveness
yeah, yeah. Very,
to American
and they
football.
and the great coaches in the '70s from rugby league used to come to America and come back, and they. I remember one of the coaches, famous Jack Gibson. He made the steel curtain. He got that from the Pittsburgh, and he developed the defense. Yeah, so it's a lot of copying, and borrowing. Yeah,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. You know what they say. It's all right to copy as long as you're copying the right cat.
yeah. That was the biggest challenge. And then I was lucky, I was lucky because I had a lot of family there. So they helped. I stayed with an uncle.
Well, yeah. What were your family?
So
What part of
so I
the
was at I
states?
was at my auntie's funeral in LA. Like a lot of my auntie lived in. Well, I don't know. They call it South Central anymore, right by USC, 41st Street. And I was
Yeah.
so my
Locals
uncle.
still call it South Central, but some
Yeah,
they now call it
yeah,
South LA.
yeah. When I people, so we lived in South Central. My auntie used to cook for USC. So we lived. That was our
Mm,
main family house. And then when my auntie's funeral, I met my cousins, and they lived in Diamond Bar by Mount Sac. They said, move out here and we'll look after you for football. When I moved out to Diamond Bar, I thought I was in Hollywood. It's beautiful, it's big
yeah.
houses. And went to Mount San Antonio and looked at the campus, big campus. Man, 20,000 seat stadium. I was excited, but the guy told me, oh, don't worry, Saturdays you'll see 20 people. Those junior college campus
Right.
stadiums I like. Yeah. So I was lucky that I had that support, you know.
You ought to see Mount Sac now. Mount Sac looks like a full blown Division I university.
See,
They've invested a lot of resources to building up that campus,
that
and
area,
they have a new stadium.
Mm.
It's
Yeah.
it's really cool to see, especially at the JC level.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Man.
Let's go on to our next question, Coach.
Yeah.
What are
All
some of
right.
the best things about being a Division I football player?
Okay. I can tell you what you notice after you finish your scholarship and you move on. You miss the training table. That's the you miss the supplied
for
breakfast and
for
supplied dinners. It's
for those from overseas like New Zealand, Australia, or other parts of the world, can you please explain what training table is
so
regards
training
to
training
D1
table.
football?
Yeah, training table. I used to get so excited after training hard. I think, what have I got to look forward to? Oh, I've got study. But training table is where the team goes to eat dinner from 6 to 8 o'clock, and all the food you need is there. Steaks, chickens, salads, dessert. It's like a five-course menu, and it's there from Monday to Friday. So depending on the season, you might be playing away, but that's what's there for you to eat. As a team, and
So
that I
that's so
really,
that came with your scholarship. That's part of your full
yeah,
scholarship.
yeah. Kind of scholarship. What was the other question? Being a D1 player is that now you're at university. I was a good student in New Zealand high school. New Zealand high school is a very good standard of education, but man, I was not used to study, the training. The training is you have to go watch film. Then you have to, any injuries, you have to do your treatment. Then you have to go and get your lifting in. Then you have to go get your film session in. Then you have to go to your class. Then you have to come to meetings at 3 o'clock. Bang, 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 bang. So I wasn't used to. I mean, maybe other high school kids were used to it, but you have to be really disciplined in your time. I always remember being tired after training, and I'm lucky. I joined a fraternity, which was right by the stadium.
Really?
Kaisai.
Which
Yeah,
fraternity did you join?
Kaisai. I think our claim to fame is guy Leave It to Beaver. It was right by the stadium, so you know, um, so I just used to go from there straight to there, and then you had study table after dinner, so you had to hurry your dinner and go down to study hall 7 to 9, and then you go, it's like you go to bed after that. But and people think it's glam. It's only maybe it might look glamorous, but it's a lot of hard work. People don't realize, a lot of
Yeah,
hard
I
work.
remember reading a story when you mentioned the story about training table. I remember reading a story back in those days of two players from Cal Berkeley who attended a buffet.
Yes,
And can you kind of
yeah.
a
So
local Chinese buffet
yeah,
in Northern California? Can you kind of
yeah.
uh,
So
give us a
uh,
little backstory on
is,
that
is
news article?
is my is my big cousin Rich. Richard, he's a local. He's a Samoan boy who grew up in Berkeley. Everyone knew him, and then he found this eating place along San Pablo Ave. So we went there. It was only $10 all you can eat, and we'd go there every night. And man, they couldn't fill up the plates enough. They keep coming back. So the owner said to us, "Hey, look, I won't charge you if you just come on the weekend, please. You know, you know, please. You come Saturday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday for free, but you can't come during the week. So we're like, my cousin goes, okay. Yeah. So that
I,
was,
I, I remember reading that story because it made national headlines
yeah, I know.
on a
That's why.
sports page back in the 90s. And
That's,
I'm like, hey, these guys look Polynesian. And then I saw the names,
that's why.
Sagapolu. I'm
Yeah.
like, oh,
Hey,
yeah. Yeah, they're
that,
definitely Island boys right there.
so that's what I learned. Be careful what you tell the media, because if it'll spread. You know,
Yes, like wildfire. The media
like
ran with
wildfire.
that one.
Yeah. And yeah, they did. You know. Yeah.
That's
So
awesome,
thing,
man.
and you gotta be do your work, because I always realize I'm not gonna make the NFL. I was 28 when I finished playing. Um, so get your degree. That's the worst thing you can do. Is get your degree. You know. And it's always saddened me to see guys drop out. I was always sad when friends
Yeah.
left that, because only in America, man. When you come from overseas, you realize it's the greatest opportunity you'll ever get. You study. It's not free. People say it's free. They always say athletes getting free education. No, we pay for it for our bodies and our
Oh, yeah.
time. But but it's a gift given. It's an opportunity. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Nowadays, we're more informed
yes,
that,
yeah,
a scholarship, although you don't have to pay money out of your pocket, you got to give them about 80 to 100 hours a week of your time. That's
exactly.
including studies and, like you mentioned earlier, the whole
Yeah,
schedule.
yeah.
And there's not much room for a social life,
No,
but that's
right.
the price you have to pay. So it's not free,
No,
but you don't have to pay. You just have to pay with your skills and your effort and your time. You know,
exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yep.
right? We just had a kid that we referred and we helped through American Football Institute who signed a deal with Georgetown University out of
Ooh,
Hawaii
basketball, football.
and for football.
Nice. Oh
But
yes.
the value of his scholarship, if you had to pay out of pocket, the value was over $84,000 US per year to
Yeah.
go to
Well,
school at Georgetown University.
Hoyas, man, that's a great school, eh? You're in the
I,
middle,
I mean, it's right in the most powerful city in the
yeah,
world, Washington,
man.
D.C. Right there in Georgetown is right next door to Washington, D.C.
Yeah. Who's not a Hoya? Who's not a Hoya basketball fan, eh? That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
That's good for that kid from Hawaii.
definitely.
You know.
Absolutely. We have a couple island boys there now. There's a couple Samoan boys there. Seau boy. There's Pinomi. He's actually a nephew of mine. He's there,
Oh, nice.
as well as another kid, just I think from Euless, Texas, from Trinity High School. So we're
It's
seeing
good.
some great opportunities, not just on the Power Five level,
Yeah,
but
just they can
also at
go
every level.
every level, eh? Oh, nice.
Yeah, I mean Georgetown's Division One, but they're
Yeah,
mid-major, meaning they're a lower level Division One, and
yeah,
they play mainly the academic schools like the Harvards and the West Points and
yeah.
those type of
But
schools.
but when you graduate from school like Georgetown and you do well there and you connect, the connections outside are so much bigger, you know. Yeah,
For sure, and that's what we've learned over the years. Like for you and I, we were the first in our families to go
yeah,
uh, play Division One football and beyond. Right
yeah,
now, we have a couple of generations in, and we're able to educate our community, which is one of the purposes for American Football Institute is to be able to inform people what it really takes.
yeah.
And it's not a cakewalk. You're going to have to put some work in.
Yep, yep, exactly. You know.
So we're going to our next question. What are skills, training, and other things required to become a successful American football player? Especially from your vantage point, Toa, for kids who maybe from New Zealand. I know I've talked to one of the kids you just referred over recently. Could you share with our audience what you see are some of the skills and trainings and things
Like
that
yeah. So I looked at that question earlier today, and I came off.
in their journey?
Yeah. So I always came with the question for kids, for us big island kids, because the training these days of rugby and league, there's not much stamina. But for us big island kids, build some stamina, you know, so that way when you're running and conditioning, you're not feeling I'm homesick, because that's the first thing that makes you homesick is when you're not fit. You don't have that stamina for training. Honest, it's like, oh, it's too hard. I'm quitting. Build stamina because you'll be shocked how that helps you with your mental toughness. Because I always remember, Steve Marucci. If you can't run, you can't play. And then we have a rugby league background, maybe basketball. That helps. Little intrinsic skills. Um, and, and strength and agility, very keen. I know some of the guys I talk to say maybe 15 for weightlifting. You start well. 15, just learn techniques, of lifting. Don't be a monster yet. Learn the technique, then you can build on it. Get the technique right.
Yeah,
It's like we see guys all big bodies and little legs and terrible technique, but they were strong.
yeah,
Um, so you got stamina. You got I call it the four: stamina, your strength and agility helps, and mental strength. I haven't, so mental strength helps because the kid's training, he's homesick, he's running, and the coach is yelling at him, and you want to cry. The kid wants to cry and go home. You got to develop that mental strength. That's only temporary. Yeah, it's not going to last. But once you get through all
yeah,
that, man, that's when the glory comes. Once you get past that, mental strength, and then you need discipline. Discipline in who you socialize with, especially if you're a young kid. You're young over there, man. You can get caught up in your fancy. It's like we've all had friends who are bit bit flash, but a bit suspect. You know, be disciplined in your friendship, especially in your eating. In your eating habits, because the guys and you see them so disciplined in the way they train, and you're like, oh, no wonder he went NFL. Hey, you spot those guys, you're like, oh yeah, I can see him getting in the league from way back. Yeah, so it's stamina, strength and agility, mental strength, discipline, and I like that thing. Seeing it's biblical. Body is a temple. Your body's a temple, and to recognize that, and those are the things I can just think on top of my head because you're going to need them
that's
more. And I should say, and you need a good spiritual background too. That helps, spiritual strength. Good. I mean, I don't really. I'm not a preacher, but I know a lot of times I was not biblical. I didn't have a spiritual source strength of God, and I got into a lot of trouble doing my own thing.
yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you, Coach. Those are very wise words, and thank you for sharing. A lot of times, you know, especially when you have kids, for me, it was very challenging, trying to coach my own kids because I was always overcritical. I was always
Yeah.
harder on
Mm,
them.
yeah.
But one of the things that my goals for this platform is for folks like yourself who actually play big time ball, who actually went through the journey and that did the tough stuff, to be able to share those stories. Maybe it'll help somebody.
Mm, mm. Oh, sorry, Chris. I should mention the. Oh no, that's another question. Yeah. No, you're right, Chris. And that's why when I coach, sometimes I'm hard, but I want them to understand. Okay, I'll give you an example. Like, we, maybe, do you yell like your coaches do? You're yelling. Hey, that's how we are. And when everyone over here has watched Last Chance University, and they realize,
Yeah.
oh, that's what that coach does. But they realize it's just part of the psyche. Is how we are. Like prep them. And then one of my players, Jesse, he went over the station and he said, "Now I realize why you yell. It's just normal. You guys are just normal." I'm like, yeah, that's right, mate. It's just
Well, I mean, there's definitely different styles of coaching.
yeah, yeah,
Back in the days, there was definitely uh, a rougher style.
yeah,
But at the
yeah,
end of the day, it's all about production, right?
yeah. That's right.
So the whole goal is to be able to light a fire in each individual, so that together as a team, they'll be able to achieve some of their
Yeah,
goals.
that's right.
Yeah, it's
You
great.
know,
So we'll go on to our next question, Coach Toa. What are some of the things that aspiring American football players are supposed to start doing from the early ages? I know you mentioned a couple of things, but you touched on this a little bit earlier. But are there some kind of drills from kids in New Zealand or kids in Australia or kids in the UK or anywhere in the world that you think might be able to help them if they're looking at possibly transitioning to this new sport of American football, especially those countries that aren't playing American football?
yeah. Well, is that question 6?
Yeah,
That's what I'm just being just in America, we don't you don't specialize until you're around 15. Is that what they say in high school? Don't pick your main sport. You know how you get three sport athletes, and they always say
yeah,
don't specialize until you. Well, just play the sport you're doing. If you're a soccer player, keep playing. Um, but at the same time, if you start thinking you're going to play football, then they have to realize that they're going to have some upper body strength, because
yeah,
footballs are non-stop running games. So really to understand in an early age, start being disciplined in your training and your food. Starts early because I was never disciplined, so I always had to go meet the nutritionist. And she was really good.
yeah,
She was really good, but she'll be like, okay, here's the game, how to manage your eating and all that stuff. I'm like, man, I never thought about that. Because when we're young, we just eat anything, our parents. But
yeah,
if you want to be a dedicated, start early. Discipline in anything, discipline in grades. You know, how many friends do you have at school? I feel so sad for them. Well, some I helped that they dropped out because there was a struggle, or
yeah.
what I because I had an English accent. People say, "Oh, bro, can you help me with my paper?" And I'll be like, "Man, I can't even do my own paper properly," And and then just being disciplined in your training and your grades. It can never be too young, and especially your studies is important. They're not asking you to be a scientist, but having good grades to be a qualifier, what it's like in high school, man, that's a big bonus. And then
Yeah,
go to
and look,
camps,
yeah,
you know, go
camps.
to camps away from go to camps away from your home, because we get kids here in rugby league, and they go to Australia, they end up coming back, they couldn't handle it, they were homesick. You know, this is just Australia, 1 hour or 2 hours away. So practice some independence. And I think the families have to, get the kids to practice independence growing up early age, you know. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. The interesting thing is, Coach Toa, is that nowadays, with how football has grown, football is the most popular sport in the U.S. now.
It's gone
In
back
the
again.
'90s,
Good.
in our era, it was baseball that was the
Yes.
number
Yeah.
one
Well,
sport
yeah.
in the States. And now, for the last several years, mainly, really the last couple of decades, that football is kind of inched up into that top spot as
Yeah.
far as popularity. And you
Yeah.
know, the reason why
But
the education system is so strict is because look, like Aaron Rodgers, who's a Cal product, of course,
yeah.
Aaron Rodgers just signed a $200 million contract, which averages 50 million US per year.
Oh, who do
And
you sign with?
they're not
San
going to pay.
Francisco?
No, I know that's your team, but he signed back with the Packers. But my point
Oh,
is, the NFL, that's a big brand, and they
yeah,
don't
yeah,
want somebody who can't think and
yeah,
who
yeah,
can't put two words together.
yeah,
They want somebody to represent their brand, and each corporation, which is 32 teams in the NFL, they want them to be able to articulate themselves and be able to,
exactly.
you know,
Yeah,
have a conversation. So the academic system here is really pretty cool in that regards, and to be able to come here, and if you don't go to the NFL, at least you can have a degree
yeah,
when you go back.
exactly. Yeah,
A university degree that you can utilize once you
yeah,
return, if you return back to New Zealand or Australia or whatever
yeah,
country that you're transitioning from.
exactly.
Good
What
stuff,
brought
man.
about this? Because you know how football is at a challenge, crossroads of the concussion. Parents didn't want there. So what was the major thing that helped bring football back to the number one past being pastime?
Well, the interesting thing about American football now, Coach, is that although it's the number one sport professionally as far as popularity, it's the
Oh,
most
okay.
watched,
Yeah, yeah,
everything like that. But with regards to the little leagues, when I mean little leagues, I'm not talking about pre-high school, like the 8, 9, 10 year olds and the
yeah,
high schoolers and the middle schoolers.
yeah,
In those demographics, the numbers have dropped.
yeah,
And that's why for me, one of the reasons, driving forces for me to set up this platform is because there's another Coach Toa out there who maybe he's too big and too big body type wise for rugby,
mm,
you know, which we've proven already. It's not a theory
yeah, yeah,
anymore. We've
yeah.
proven
No,
that those big boys in New Zealand and Australia, Jordan
mm,
Mailata just signed,
yes,
$70 million
yes,
contract, from Australia, is
yeah,
that we can teach football.
yeah.
You can't teach 6'8", 350 running
No,
a 4.840 or
or
whatever
like
he runs.
that
You
Daniel
can't teach that.
Fa'alili, eh? No, and you're right. And the good
Daniel
thing about
Falele,
yeah, good
and
thing about Mailata was his NRL coach said to him, "Hey, you should go in our NFL try. Go try American football because that's your type of game." And even though in rugby league he was a good player, he was a very effective runner. But the game is 80 minutes, 10-yard spaces, so the perfect fit. He did the perfect thing. And you're right. There are
yeah.
some guys, Um,
So
my
I
heart
mean,
goes
think
out to the
about
little
this.
guy. Yeah.
In 4 years, he came here. He took a chance on himself. Came here, tried out for the team. He got drafted late and had to develop. But in his fourth year,
Mm.
uh, $70 million. Is there, just on a side note, what is the money like in rugby
Uh,
professionally? Is there anybody in rugby or rugby league making $70 million
it's a different level.
contract?
The only sport that can compare football, I mean, with NFL and basketball is professional soccer. All the other sports, rugby and
Yeah.
league, they are very minuscule in salaries. A million to 2 million probably a year at the most, or maybe I don't have any facts, but maybe if there's a player getting 3 million, 4 million rugby player a year, I'd be shocked.
Is that
Yeah.
4 million New Zealand dollars or USD?
Well, I'd be shocked if there's 3 million USD a year top rugby players. I'd have to research it. Maybe endorsements, but no, it's a different planet. That we're looking at NFL as
So,
a
so
world brand.
not having details, but just in general, if you open up the New Zealand newspaper tomorrow morning or open it up on your phone and somebody signed a $10 million a year contract for rugby, would that be like crazy, or would that be something that you're like, oh, he got $10 million?
Yeah, that'd be unheard of. Like if you're the top rugby league player, maybe a 2 million or 1.1 million a year or two. That raises eyebrows. So that's the level we're talking about. Just different
Yeah,
markets. Economies. Yeah.
yeah,
That's
and that's kind of look. The vast majority of American football players, let's face it, they're not going to make it to the NFL.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Here at the American Football Institute, our goal is not to create NFL players. If they have the talent and the discipline, great, keep going.
Mm, mm,
Our goal is to maximize and take advantage of the football opportunities so that you can become a pro at something.
yeah. Yeah.
You can be a pro business person, entrepreneur, and you can be. There's so
Yes.
many
Yeah.
levels that you can be a pro. You don't have to. Success is not determined by whether or not you go professional in the sport.
Yeah.
To me, true
Exactly.
success is maximizing your potential and your opportunity.
Exactly. You know how many athletes play pro sport for years, and I remember one of my Trousine, the left tackle, went to Chicago. He was telling me a friend of his 10 years in the league, and I think 90,000 to show for it for all the marriage, divorces, and just it's not the amount of money you make, it's the amount you save and what you do with your resources. You're exactly right. Exactly right.
100%.
Yeah, and teaching our
Let's
kids
go on to our
how you. Yep.
let's go on to our next question, please.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay. So I looked at seven, six. Is that six? Eh?
Yeah. So question 6 is, how are there any common traits a prospective player can emulate to make it to the top levels of Division 1, D1, or NFL?
Yeah. I call this the 3 Ds because I think about guys I used to watch or play with, and I just knew something about them. And so to me, it's the 3 Ds: desire, determination, and discipline. You know, it's just that desire. Because when you're young, it's just what our friends used to say. I'm going to the league. I'm going to make it in the league. So those are the 3 things. They might be too general, but desire, determination, and discipline in your life. You know,
I love it. I love it.
yeah,
Desire, determination,
and
and
discipline.
discipline.
Yeah,
I might have
yeah.
to. I'm gonna have to borrow that from you and eventually steal it from you.
Over somewhere. Yeah,
Yeah, good stuff. Let's go to our close to our final question here. Uh, can you share? This is something that we kind of do here at AFI at American Football Institute. Kind of, if you would please share with us 3 big tips of advice for aspiring athletes outside of the U.S. or even in the U.S. Wanting
yeah.
to succeed in American football. What's your big 3 tips or advice for us for our audience
I feel
tonight?
like those guys on what's that? Bino Cook on ESPN or something. So hey, so one I'm going to take it back to grades, academic or training. Like a skill. Having academic grades. You don't have to be. They're not asking you to be a 4.0, but having the grades to be able to go into college. How many? They say about junior college, Chris? You never went to junior college, You're lucky. But the best athletes played at junior college, Because they didn't have the smart, they didn't have the qualifications to go to the higher level. So it's always about your academics. So you become a well-rounded person. That's one. Two, I do the 4 S's. 4 S's for that: stamina, strength, suppleness, and speed. The stamina, we know you got to be able to run. There's nothing worse when you're homesick, but because when you're homesick and you're not in condition, that equals go back home. You want to go
Yeah,
back to your parents. It, strength is important, but I don't know. It seems like when I talk to guys, strength is important, but it's not the massive Tom Platt squat lifting. It's more, you know, body, so strength and suppleness and speed. Suppleness. I always think of the when I was talking to this ballerina. I always think of that story of who was the great running back, Eddie George. Remember he
hmm
did ballet
Eddie
classes
George.
and Penn State. And suppleness, and you don't have to be a ballerina, but being being really agile and everything, and then speed. Those are the 4 S's: stamina, strength, suppleness, and speed. you don't have to be the fastest guy, but you just have to have speed of foot, speed of hands. You know, I used to have a lot of cousins in like Hawaii. They were massive guys, big lifters. But when it came
Yeah.
to like step feet, oh, their feet were so slow. You know, I was thinking, oh, you know, you could easily, you know, it's like a big guy's slow feet. The guy just rushes the corner him and he can't turn quick. You know, feet is everything,
Yeah.
eh? That's what. And then back to my 3Ds. So those are academic, your grades, your four S's, stamina, strength, someone and speed, and three, back to our 3Ds again. Because it's desire, determination, and discipline. The desire drives everything. You know, it's like, well, you come across guys twice as talented as yourself, or three, but they don't have that desire. And we see it in all sports, you know. You could be the Tarzan of training. When it came to the game, they played like Jane, you know. So it's
Uh, Look like Tarzan, play like Jane.
yeah, yeah. I
Those
used to
guys
see this. I used to,
really
yeah,
frustrating for
I
coaches,
used to
right?
watch these guys, you know, in community college. You know, they come back for the military. I'd be like, man, how can I even make the field with these killers? You know, and then when they play, you're like, oh, you know. So yeah, those are. I can't determine enough that your desire and determination, because guys go through hard times. Your times are going to get hard over there in the States. You know, I tell them, you know, so many guys come back early, and it's sad to hear that.
Yeah.
But you know, yeah. So
Yeah,
hopefully,
I agree
you know,
with everything you said, Coach. And the one word that caught my eye was suppleness. I
yeah,
typically associate that word with a different environment, but it makes sense. You know, the way you
yeah, yeah.
the way you explained it with ballet. I'll never forget Willie Galt. You know, the guys like that
Oh
back
yeah,
in the
yeah. The
Chicago
receiver, yeah,
Bears.
the sprinter,
You know,
and I
perception
think,
wise, ballet can be looked at in a certain way, but in
yeah,
reality, those guys are phenomenal athletes.
yeah, yeah, yeah. They are. I mean, I used to have a science teacher. He used to always go on in community college astronomy. He goes, Nureyev, the dancer, he could hang. He had more hang time than Jordan. And he goes, you don't believe me? Watch his dancing. He'll
Yeah,
spiral up and up. I mean, wow. But no. And then Penn State. I used to always, when I was at junior college, I used to always follow all these colleges. Penn State had ballet when Joe Paterno, before that horrible thing happened. They used to all enroll in ballet classes. You know,
yeah,
back in the day. Yeah,
man, Coach, I'm super thankful and super humbled that you've invested some time to share some of your experiences and to share some of your advice. You know, here at the American Football Institute, you know, we love having people, real people, telling real stories about the experiences you had. And as a former Cal Bear, you know, it's such a prestigious university academically. It's really an honor and a privilege to have you on our show. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart, Coach.
well, thank you and Cherry, and if you could give a shout out to uh, George Malaulu. I was really proud. I played against George when he was playing at Arizona. You know, quarterback, awesome quarterback.
Yeah.
You know, and
Yeah, George, I mean, although we crossed paths, it was through the Metro Lions 40th
yeah,
anniversary back in 2019 where you and I got to actually spend some quality time hanging out and
yeah.
enjoying the festivities from the Metro. Can you talk a little bit about Metro? I don't want to leave
Oh
this
yeah, that's
without
right. I promised to
you
promote. So,
kind of
so when I started my story in the '80s, so Metro Lions is still the oldest continuous American football club in New Zealand. We started off in '82 and have kept Metro Lions. We now have a women's team, a men's team, it's, under 19, and a youth team. Other clubs have come and go, but we've been constant. We're mainly built on the labor of four families: the Merediths, Policies, the Stowers, and oh, it's another family. Sorry, the other family, but we it's done on love, and we're a great club. Would love for anyone that's coming to. We get a few Americans come play. You might have met Coach Tim Hewley. Would
mhm.
love for anyone if they're down here in New Zealand, Auckland, New Zealand. Would love for them to come and join us. Coach, we even always looking for American coaches. We had a very successful youth coach in Lee Aono. He came and coached the championship team. Just ran that wing tee to death. Yeah, and we're based in
The
the
wing
central
T.
Auckland. The wing tee. and we're based in central Auckland. So we're in the heart of Auckland, um, and it's it's a lifetime commitment. We do it because we love it, and nothing. I always remember. You remember Apocalypse Now when the general
Yeah,
goes, he always I love the Robert Duvall goes, I love the smell of napalm. Well, I remember our coach saying, I love the smell of the pigskin. On the summer days. That to me, that always reminds you of the States. And coaching these young kids and just it's a blessing. I coached at Berkeley High for a few years. That was one of the best experiences of my life. So yeah, plug for our Metro Lions club. We're also one of the most successful clubs, but it's measure success. We have 3 players over at New Mexico Institute.
yes,
Yeah, so it's awesome. Very proud.
that's great. It's awesome. I love the work you're doing in the community with American football. You and I share that passion for this wonderful sport. And, although the enrollments in the little leagues have dropped to a certain extent, I don't think the game is going anywhere. And part of my mission is to continue to promote this phenomenal sport so that people can have options.
Yeah,
There's going to be guys who are great in rugby and they're doing well, keep going.
yeah. No,
But for those guys who are looking to transition here at the American Football Institute, we want to be a source for them for mentorship, for advice, and to be able to show them the right pathway to kind of
exactly.
help them get to achieve their goals in their
Yes,
journey of success in American football.
absolutely, absolutely.
Any final words, Coach? I know you've already had a chance to plug Metro Lions. I know I can't go through this interview with you, this time with you without mentioning my being grateful for the Bilisi family, Maui
Oh,
and Sam
oh
and
yeah,
the whole gang, Mountain Stowers. You
yeah.
know,
They
there's so many great guys. Jason Vaca.
yeah.
Um,
They
you
all
guys
yeah.
have such a great family atmosphere and it's such a great organization. I really enjoyed my time there in New Zealand.
Well, there's going to be another time you'll be come back down. The borders are open, well, sort of. And looking forward to it again. But we do it. We love it, Chris. And I think football has a massive. I run into so many people, parents who bring their kids, and the kids are a bit small, but the kids love the game. So flag football's growing here. You know,
Yeah.
Unfortunately or unfortunately, it's growing. It's exploding. Sort of. Yeah,
Well, it could be a good intro to the game. And,
yeah,
I'm looking forward to putting together some more equipment. We want to get some more equipment
awesome.
to you guys.
Yeah,
And that's
we
something
work.
that I'm going to be promoting here with a lot of our partners to get you
Yeah,
guys more equipment for the youth, more equipment for the
yeah, for the youth.
adults. And we just want to be a source for you guys to be able to partner
That's awesome.
and create more opportunities.
I'll get Martin. That's his lane. His pathway. That's his
Yeah.
portfolio.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Well, Coach, thank you so much again. Our time is done for this evening, but we'll definitely stay in touch. And anything that we can do here at the American Football Institute, please don't hesitate to reach out.
No, God bless America.
God bless you, Coach.
All right, God bless. All right, talk soon, Coach.
Take care.
Love you. Okay,
All right,
take
Coach.
care.
Take
All
care.
right.
Much love.